Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Uncharted. So, when I have to go on and forcibly compare this movie to an Indiana Jones, a Lara Croft Tomb Raider, a really just Goonies, National Treasure, The Da Vinci Code, any number of films that we have seen throughout our lives, I would take every single one of those movies and compare it to Uncharted and say that this movie falls ridiculously short. To me, this movie is uneventful, or at points in time just kind of like the twists and turns that are to be in this film. I am just not exactly jazzed about it. I went through this movie and I just found it to just be boring. I'm like, yeah, I don't care for a puzzle piece film because I didn't think that's what this was, but that's what it was. It was a puzzle piece film. And I'm like, where is Nathan Drake going on, and while a building is just falling apart, Nathan Drake is jumping from obstacle to obstacle, like parkour wise. We have Tom Holland, who is to say himself that, man, he has never had to be so, he had to work out so much more harder in this film than he ever had in any of his Spider-Man films. Like, really? So, were you ever in the suit? Were you actually doing the events in the Spider-Man movies? Were you actually ever even in the... Were you in the Spider-Man films? Yeah. But I guess you can just say that I guess Tom Holland can't really sell a film also. We have Tom Holland who's sharing this entire movie with Mark Wahlberg. And I'm like, so is it like, what is the problem with Tom Holland being able to sell his own film? I need to figure that out now. Is he just that bad of an actor? What's going on? I don't know how many times that I've seen Tom Holland, and he always has to be an ensemble cast, and I think I'm just giving up on a Tom Holland movie to sell me with just Tom Holland alone. Because I guess we just can't have that. We have to have every single one of these movies have this massive ensemble cast, or a veteran actor that is to be alongside Tom Holland to just hold his hand throughout the entire film. That may seem like a lot of people who love Tom Holland are like, ah, rah, rah. I'm just being honest. Why is Mark Wahlberg in 90% of this film, it seems? If almost 80%, somewhere ballparkingly in there. We have Mark Wahlberg arrive in the beginning of the film, and he's at the end. He's even in the end credit scenes. So, he's in every part of the film. Why? Why, I ask you? Why not just make Mark Wahlberg Nathan Drake? We had it to where Mark Wahlberg has gone on and done enough of these kinds of films anyways. I just don't get it. We also have Antonio Banderas in this film for some reason. Nolan North is to make a cameo, of course, if you are to know, Nolan North, you know him as the voice of Nathan Drake, who is to be. And I go on and I'm like, okay, they couldn't have actually used Nolan North in a much more prominent role. He's just a guy that's just there. It's just, when you go on and you kind of have also Tom Holland playing a video game with Jacksepticeye on Jacksepticeye's channel, we of course have Tom Holland mentioning how they were doing some car chase in this film. and how they were trying to do something like that, and it just, I guess, didn't happen. I would have loved a car chase in this movie because at least we would have had something in this film. Because I just feel like these events aren't exciting enough, and it feels like I'm naturally assuming that there's just a lot of copy and pasting, even much more so going through any video game. So if you're a fan of the video game, this is probably a waste of your time because you're probably just seeing a bunch of copied and pasted scenes from a number of Uncharted games somewhere. Like, this movie doesn't exactly feel original or doesn't feel all that good of a payout like we should have been getting. So I'm just being honest. I hope that people could just go on and just realize, like, I'm not trying to be too harsh on this film. I'm just trying to be good enoughly harsh to equal my boredom upon this film. Because I just was like, man, this is just an action movie that doesn't have enough action whatsoever. To where we go on and there's like so many cliche-ish like scenes, how we have to go on and be more excited about Nathan Drake juggling uh, just alcoholic bottles instead of having him like parkouring through a building somehow, like having it crumble while he's jumping from piece to piece to piece. It's like, I'm sorry, if you compare like the Prince of Persia movie with Jake Gyllenhaal to this film, like you see like Jake Gyllenhaal and whoever his stuntman is doing these flips and trips and whatever, and that could be a million times much more of an exciting movie than this becomes. You kind of see Tom Holland do like kind of the bare minimum of an Uncharted film. Just a lot of people could say that opening sequence was exciting, but then you have to wait like 40 some odd minutes to really feel that excitement again. Um, and this movie jumps through too many settings for me to care. But I'm going to have to list those settings when we get through parts of this film, if I can even memorize where exactly any number of these settings have anything to do with this movie. So, with that said, let's just go to that double five time territory. I think I've kind of mentioned enough about this film. Let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to do spoil this movie. So, where can you go to see this film besides a theater? You can go on to an app that I've been using fairly regularly called. You can Google search it and use this app called Fox HD Movies. The logo will say so. The title will say something different. You can watch a heavily bootlegged version of this right now because that's what I watched. Like, I couldn't really make out all the lines, but I really didn't care because once I realized what this movie was, I nothing really meant to me. Really meant anything to me. So I just saw the bootleg version, which probably doesn't sound all that great, but it looks good enough. So I got to see how this movie was to play out, and I was like, okay, this is just. I would love to go on and watch a National Treasure besides this, and it's the same thing. It's almost the same thing. It's pretty much. There's nothing different from a National Treasure than this film. Um, but yeah, so the logo will say Fox HD Movies. The title will say something different. The app, Play HD TV Movies. You can go on and download that app via Google search and be able to watch a bootleg version of this. If you want to wait till it is to be premium access or early access, because it should quickly be that at some point, because this will probably be the only thing that probably will sell in a theater, because I don't think there's anything else big enough out there. With the exclusion of some people wanting to go back and watch certain movies. But anyways, so You can also go on to an app called Letter C Movies and again watch another bootleg version of Uncharted. Uh, really, either way, if you went on to a theater and saw this or you saw a bootleg version, not missing much. You can also go on YouTube and watch the end credit scenes because they have that also. Because again, this is a big enough movie that eventually there'll be any number of things for you to just kind of see for this film. So let's go into spoilers. Let's just go into spoilers about this movie. So spoilers now for everybody. So we have it at the beginning of the film where we just have Nathan Drake's character that is hanging by one of these uh, kind of netted kind of crate things or kind of netted things that is to be attached to this plane that are to eventually go on and get parachuted out. Every single one of these big, massive things that are holding all this cargo that is kind of netted together and like netted into these big like box looking things where Drake is hanging on. So Drake is going on and jumping from the crate to crate to crate that's tied to all this plane that eventually is going to get parachuted out at some point when eventually all of these are to be left from off this plane. So all of a sudden Drake is jumping from product to product, all of a sudden to have a car kind of smack into him, and so he just can't get back onto this plane, so he's just kind of flying in the air. Boom, we stop there. Now we have to go back into flashbacks. So we have a young Nathan and a young Sam, where I guess Nathan was trying to leave this orphanage, and Sam was trying to catch him as he was trying to leave. So we go on and have, of course, both Nathan and Sam who are going into this one place to talk about the guy who is to be the first man supposedly to go all around the world, and supposedly that wasn't the real truth. That really, uh, like, that story was kind of a fabrication. So we go on and have both Sam and Nate who are staring at this map. And so, dare in fact, this is to tell you what exactly is going to go on within this story. About, of course, these kind of pirates who are going on and having a lot of gold within their pirate ships. This is basically the Goonies. This is basically the Goonies. Hey, where's One-Eyed Willie when you need one? So we go on and we have kind of Nathan and Sam that go back to their orphanage to have it where Sam is going to be leaving Nate here. And so fast track us having a much older Nathan Drake who is to, I guess, be a bartender who, of course, is to be late again to his job where he is to go on and toss all these things of hey, look, I have a cup. Oh, hey, look, I have a drink. Hey, give me some complicated drinks so I can go on and just dance around with these cups, because heaven forbid we do anything that's much more exciting upon this film. I don't really care if really cup juggling and drink juggling is a very difficult thing. I don't care. I'm like, where is the action-packed part of this film? Like, I am just like, man, is this the most exciting thing we're going to see from Tom Holland? And surefire enough, that's basically what we get. So, we have, of course, Tom that is asking this girl, hey, like, please give me more complicated drinks so I can go on and give you this drink. So he does. And so afterwards, we, of course, have Nathan meet back up with this girl to steal her bracelet. So we go on, we have Nathan kind of cleaning up for the night, all of a sudden meeting with Victor Sullivan, who we find out is Mark Wahlberg in this film. Yeah, like we basically don't, like, very little time has passed before boom, there's Mark Wahlberg through all of this film. It's just so we have Nathan Drake that, of course, is talking to Victor, and Victor wants Nathan to work with him, and Nathan is like, no, like, not gonna work. So we go on, and all of a sudden have Nathan, who's kind of looking for his wallet, to realize that it's gone, and all of a sudden there's to be a note or a card from Victor Sullivan saying, "Thou shalt not steal." And so that leads Nathan to get back to where Victor is to have his place so he can steal back his wallet, but also is to go on and try to steal back the bracelet so he can make his way out of here. Victor is to cut him off, to just be like, "Oh, like, do you have better business to fry, or bigger fish to fry?" And Nathan is, out of all the things that he's kind of looking on, he is to go on and find this map. And so Victor is to really just point out, like, "Hey, Nathan, why are you looking at this map?" Nathan goes on and is to tell Victor that, like, this story is true. And that's the only thing that seems legit out of all the stuff that you have. And Victor's like, "Well, I know the story's true because I heard the story also." We find out that both Nathan and Victor are to have an acquaintance, and of course that's Sam. So it seems that Nathan is wanting to team up with Victor because, of course, he's working with Victor because of Sam. We're going to find out that really Victor is not wanting to give up much of his payout as far as his treasure hunt is to go. Because we have Victor that's telling Nathan that he's going to get 10% and he's lucky if he gets that. So Nathan really has no real money to get out of this, so why is he risking his life for 10%? And he doesn't even know if he's really going to get that, because heaven forbid he can really trust Victor, right? Because Nathan goes on and says that they're going to split it 50-50, and Nathan and Victor's like, "No, you're getting 10%, you're lucky if you get that." So we push on to have our characters go on to this thing called Barcelona, where they are going to this auctioneerish like place where they are to try to get this this gold cross key thing, because supposedly there are two gold cross key things that are to seemingly be the thing that they need for the next adventure that they're going to have to go on and do. And so we of course have it where we have Victor that's going on and is trying to place bids for this golden key as it comes up, as we have also Santiago Moncada, who of course is Antonio Banderas in this movie, and so he's going to really be a very important villain in this story. Man, is he going to be in the rest of this film, just you wait. He'll be very important to this whole entire story. If anything, we'll probably have Braddock, who is actually Santiago's sidekick, who is way more important than actually Antonio Banderas' character is, sadly enough. So it seems like she's doing all the heavy lifting, and Antonio is just there, sadly. Just the only thing that he does is go on and talk to his dad, who of course is Armando Moncada, and he doesn't even speak to him in English. We had like subtitles. Luckily, the bootleg version, I could hear I could see subtitle wise what they were saying. Because luckily enough for me, it was an English subtitle thing. I'm like, oh, thank God. But it didn't really have much of any real importance, because Murado was going on and losing faith in his son and saying that he's going to go on and end this scavenge hunt and kind of do this his own way and kind of kick his son out, to where in kind we have Santiago who goes on and kills his father to just kind of take control of things by basically slicing his throat. Where we go on and turn around and have Santiago being met with the same fate, having Braddock kind of take over somewhere down the road. But we'll get there. So we go on and we have Nathan, who is in this auction house. He is supposed to go on and turn out the power. But for some odd reason, he's going on and having problems doing so. So Nathan is trying to cut out the power, and all of a sudden he is to meet this Scotsman, which all of a sudden he does not understand what this Scotsman is saying. He's saying gibberish, into where Nathan is like, "What are you saying? Huh? What?" So Nathan goes on and is to now have to fight out this Scotsman, which just forces him to all of a sudden land himself onto the like these number of like light roped things, where he's just kind of like balancing back and forth on these rope lights. And like, I guess you can say that that's an action packed sequence somehow, but we really have it where Nathan is to become this decoy for Victor to go on and change his blazer to one of the people that works at this place's blazer, so that way he can go on and take this golden key without anybody noticing. All of a sudden, while Victor is trying to sweep away with this key without anybody noticing, we all of a sudden have Braddock chasing after him, where all of a sudden we have Victor, who is going on and telling these authorities that it's like, "Oh, hey, this woman, she's trying to steal this." And so they come to the evade to try and get this girl away from Victor, and Victor makes it off with this key. And so we just have Nathan, who just becomes a distraction that eventually has to figure out how to make his way out of this building, with, of course, avoiding being arrested. So we go on and we have, of course, one key, and this, of course, is going to take two keys. So, so we go on here, and we, of course, have both Nathan and Victor, who are trying to track down where the second key is. And so they make their way all the way to a church right after they go on and meet up with Chloe. So Chloe is to, of course, like Nathan, Victor want to kind of work with Chloe, but it seems that Chloe is to go on and try to steal this key from Nathan, and we now have Nathan that has to parkour his way to try to chase after Chloe. And then Nathan is telling Chloe, it's like, "Hey, whatever you're going to try to do here, like, it's not going to work because you don't know where to go next, and we do." And so Chloe's just like, like, "I guess I'll work with you." Because Chloe, like, is okay working with Nathan, but she doesn't like working with Victor because she knows that she'll get ripped off by Victor. And that's the reason why she's very hesitant. She wants to steal this key and do this on her own, so she'll get this payout because she doesn't trust Victor. So we go on and have these three characters making it to the Santa Muerna del Pi church. P.I. So P, Pi. we of course have these characters going to this church, and so they're looking around in this church to figure out, like, okay, like, that'll lead us to another clue, and so on and so forth. So we of course have this book that's to tell them where they are to go. We also have a number of times where Nathan is to have a number of postcards from his brother. At some point, a number of the postcards are to say, like, well, uh, like, this is a world that you've never seen. As we had Nathan in the flashback going on and putting a flame over this paper so he can go and read this note. So that's going to go and have some importance later, and we'll talk about it. So, this church. So, we have at one point where they're going and looking at one word, and they are seeing this word inscripted called heaven, and now they have to go on and find where hell is. It's like, okay. So, they end up going to this one kind of puzzle pieced thing that is to have this skeleton with these wings on it, and so Nathan Drake goes and hits this button to all of a sudden have us have this one uh, kind of piece kind of tilt one odd way. So they go on, and we have both Nathan and Chloe who kind of spin this thing the other way to have it all of a sudden be that there are two keyholes. So we now have it where they have to figure out which way to twist the keys. And Victor is going on and saying, like, well, clockwise, right? So they both turn it the same way clockwise all of a sudden to spit out these darts. And we luckily have it where Victor is to not get killed by one of these darts. And he's like, oh my god, like... And they're like, man, like, didn't you read the thing? And, like, Victor all of a sudden is saying, hey, I wear glasses. Like, I'm sorry. Like, So, he's just like, well, like, now since that didn't work, let's twist it the other way. So, they go and they twist it out another way to lead to an opening. So, now both Nathan and Chloe are heading down this area. And so we have some kind of moments where Chloe and Nathan are alone together as Victor is kind of getting an ear feed where we had in the auction place where Nathan was kind of going and doing like this, and Victor was telling Nathan, don't put your finger in your ear, you look stupid. So we have both Nathan and Chloe, and so we get some backstory in Chloe. That it seems at one point that Chloe was to go on and find this bronze statue that was to have a number of jewels, and at some point with her dad, and so Chloe was to go and tell her dad about this bronze statue that was to have a bunch of gems, and so her father had taken the statue, sold it, and like just ran away with the money. And that's her story, I guess, of like she's a person that I guess is known to be effed over by people, so that's why she is hard of trusting people. So we go on here, and so we get to a point in this story where we go on and have it where these guys are trying to figure out all this puzzle, and so really this is to continue to lead them to a number of different unlocking mechanisms and so on and so forth. So with this key, so we go on and we have at one point where we have Victor who has to toss down his key through this sewer system, and is to have them go and combine these keys together to unlock this one place to get into this rave at some point. Now I'm like, okay, this makes no sense. So we're now at some underground rave. Just like, man, this movie just goes all over the place. Just wherever it needs to go, just let it off. So we have, of course, Tom Holland or Nathan Drake that's pretending to be a bartender that's kind of going on and juggling all these drinks, just kind of offering some girl a drink and so on and so forth. We had at some point where Holland and or Nathan and Chloe were dancing at some point, if you could call it that, because heaven forbid anybody can dance in a movie that probably doesn't even have music going on, because you probably have to hear the actors and the music doesn't really matter. So they just kind of have to look like they're dancing to something, so that way they can hear the actors in a lot of movies, because I've seen that before. So we go on and we have it to where they find behind the bartender that there is another secret opening. So this leads us to have these guys kind of create another distraction to where all of a sudden they're lighting the bar on fire, and they get an opening for them to go on into this other section of this hole. And so really this just kind of continues to just lead them into a spot where they are going to eventually get drowned, because we have it to where there's this fountain that starts to release all of its water. And so now Mark has to go on into this pizza restaurant to go and break this one glass to unlock this door with this gold key. And so while of course we have Victor who's dealing with trying to break this hefty glass, we also go on and have Braddock that arrives that is trying to take down Victor while doing this. We have it where both Chloe and Nathan are drowning, and they're consistently telling Victor, hey, can you speed this up? Like, hurry it up. So if we didn't have Victor that's complaining to Nathan about him kind of hurrying up what he's doing, now we're doing the exact same thing to Victor. Wow, what a drastic change in things that movie does. Wow, like they don't repeat scenes at all. But this time we have someone's life in their hands. Oh no. So we go on and have it where where Chloe and Nathan are trying to open their kind of sewer thing on their end to get out of this kind of watery grave. And then Victor finally unlocks his key. And so all of a sudden we have these guys just getting out of this container. And Chloe almost drowns, but luckily Nathan is to save her. Could have left her to drown, but no, he decided to do the good thing and was trying to just get her out of her drowned bad place and kind of revive her. So really all that kind of happens here is towards the end of this whole rung of things is we have both Chloe and Nathan that are to make it to this very big place with a bunch of urns that have a bunch of salt in it. Like urns that are like 8 feet tall, supposedly, as Tom Holland is to tell us. Bunch of urns. And so we have Victor that's desperately asking, like, hey, tell me everything you're seeing. And so we have Chloe that's to open one of the urns and realize that there's just salt in it. It's like, okay. So all the urns are, of course, to break because the one that kind of Chloe's leaning against is starting to crack. All of a sudden we have salt that kind of pours all out here, and we see another map. And it's like, oh great, another map somewhere. Who gives us? Who really cares? So we go on and we, of course, have them trying to figure out where the heck to go next. And so that just leads us to, of course, having Nathan figure out the clue. Because he is to go and look at the postcards that, of course, he is to get information from Sam. And he is to find out that there is a hidden message in there that says, like, hey, the keys are the compass. And so Nathan realizes that he can go and take out one of these jewels. Luckily, he picked the right jewel to just kind of prick out. And he realizes that both the keys can be a compass to another location that's on this map. Wow, is this, like, this treasure hunt is really elaborate. Just... So this leads us to a location in the Philippines. And I'm like, yeah, this is exciting. So we have it seemingly where Nathan is going to leave and kind of find this location eventually on himself or with himself, but we have it to where Victor is to kind of be able to track him anyways, so it really doesn't matter. We also had it where Chloe was also going to betray Nathan also, and we find out that Chloe is actually working with Antonio Banderas' character. But by the time that Chloe is actually working with Antonio Banderas is dead. And then Braddock is to be the leader of all this. And we're, of course, just like, okay, what matters? Because Braddock was doing all the heavy lifting anyways. So, So, we now go on, and this leads us to eventually having that opening sequence where we have it where both Nathan and Victor are getting in this plane and heading to the Philippines because it seems that Braddock is to know where these guys are going also. So we have it where both Nathan and Victor are to go on to just kind of commandeer this plane, and then they're going to get some parachutes and jump out of this plane at the perfect timing. While, weirdly enough, we have it to where both... We have in this plane where Braddock and all of her men are in the exact same room where both Nathan and Victor are whispering. And I'm like, how is it that you can't hear these people? They're in the same room! Just, what the fuck? And so, we have it where they're kind of like both Victor and Nathan are whispering to one another. And so Braddock is just kind of like thinking that she sees something. And so we go on and just have it where Nathan is to break it to Victor that there's a possibility that Sam was actually to be killed by Braddock's people, or Braddock herself. And so we find out that Sam is actually dead, supposedly. But then we turn around, because end credits will tell you differently, that all of a sudden we see another postcard being made by Sam, showcasing that he's still technically alive. So, because of course, like, in the video games, we had it to where, like, there's whole entire, like, video games where you have to go and find Sam and so on and so forth, so it's not exactly a surprise when you actually go through this movie that it's like, oh yeah, Sam is dead, oh no, he's not dead, oh blah blah blah. Because we had it to where, of course, Victor was to be running away from some people that were going to shoot him, and Sam had gotten shot. And Victor tried to run off, not realizing if Sam was okay or not because he was trying to not get killed. And Sam somehow had gotten shot, and Victor had ran off. That's what he says in the later part of this film when both of them are in the flying ship, the flying boat, the flying pirate ship. So we go on and we have it where Nathan is to release all of these netted uh, crates of things, and that's how we get the opening sequence of this movie. And supposedly we have Antonio Banderas' character, who is to say that that red car was to somehow bring him luck, and so that's why he's bringing this red car with him on this journey. Even though this feels like a waste to bring a car with this, it's just a random item to have on a plane. So we now have the sequence where, again, Nathan is going from uh, these netted cargo things from thing to thing to just try to make it back onto this plane because he doesn't have a parachute. Victor, of course, to have a parachute. Chloe's to have a parachute. Nathan is the only odd man out here. We even have at some point where Chloe was to drive out of this plane with this red car, and Nathan was to make it onto this, of course, red car. And Chloe's like, hey, you don't have a parachute? And he's like, no, of course I don't. So we go on and have both Chloe and Nathan who go on to one of these like big, massive crate netted things, so that way they can go on and rip this parachute, so that way they can go and land in somewhere in the Banda Sea, where they're just kind of floating off. But it's okay because we'll quickly transition to somewhere else because it really doesn't matter at this point. So we have Braddock who is to make it to the Philippines, and so we have it at some point where both Chloe and Nathan are to make it to shore to bump into Nolan North, who doesn't actually have a name in this movie. He's just some hotel guest person that's sitting on some bench. And we have it to where Nathan is like, well, hey, yeah, like, I fell out of a plane, and this happened to me, and that happened to me. And Nolan North is like, oh, I've had that happen to me, too. Great. That's it. Like, just... Nolan North does, like, he's just a guy sitting on a bench somewhere. Great! Just... Man, they couldn't have actually used him somewhere? Just... Come on. Like, they couldn't have had him as, like, goon number 3 and given him some, like, kind of one-liners and kind of some funny bits? No? This is the same guy who has done Deadpool for a number of years. The voice of Deadpool. He could have a lot of funny lines in this film. But no, like, Nolan North is just reserved to, like, oh, I had that happen to me once. And walked off. Oh, great. It's just... Tom Holland was just so riveted about, like, yeah, we had Nolan North and cameoed in this movie. And yeah, and look what you did with him. Just look at what you did with him. I love Nolan North. I'm a fan. Hence why I said, like, he's been doing Deadpool for a number of years and whatever. I've seen some Uncharted games. I haven't seen all of them. But yeah, it's just so yeah. So we just have it where Nathan is to eventually figure out that there is to be some cave nearby that, of course, have these like these pirate boats, 2 pirate boats filled with gold, as if this is the Goonies all over again. And we kind of have this, like, Goonies thing going on towards the end of this film. It's like, really, if you want to go and watch Goonies, you'd probably be better off. Sean Astin should have been in this movie somewhere. Sean Astin should have been Nathan Drake. He's young enough. He's in really good shape, amazingly good shape. So Cala de Oro is of course the location at the end here. We are to go and find these pirate ships. We of course have Victor, who again is meeting up with Nathan because still got a tracer on him. So we go on now, and we have, of course, in this film, uh, where we again figure out that Braddock is to figure out where exactly Nathan and Victor is, because everybody just must have a tracker on these people. I don't get it. It's just, so you give both Nathan and Victor some time to kind of just be like, yeah, like look at all these barrels of gold. This is great. And Nathan is just like, well, yeah, like all that mattered is I was to go on and solve this mystery for my brother, and that's all that really matters to me. Like the money doesn't exactly matter to me. And so Victor is just like, well, yeah, like look at all the gold that we can get. So all of a sudden we have Braddock, who has these helicopters that are basically hoisting out these ships, and now she's going to drop all these ships off onto these kind of boats, so we can go on and kind of like thumb through them and get all these gold pieces, because this is like millions and millions of, or billions of dollars or whatever. So we now have this just kind of midair helicopter boat versus boat movie, as we have Braddock on one boat who's being hauled away, and we have Victor and Nathan that are kind of on their boat getting hauled away. And so we go on to have, of course, where Victor is to make it all the way to the pilot of the helicopter, and he's to kind of beat this guy up and is to go on and kind of commandeer the one ship. And so now we have Braddock, who's trying to crash her ship into Nathan and Victor's ship. And we have Nathan, who's kind of making pirate jokes about, like, oh, like, hi ye sailor, and this and that, kind of doing like nautical terms and all this stuff, and port bows and all the rigmarole of whatever he's saying here. And he's like, yeah, I've always ever wanted to do this. I'm like, yeah, like, how about you just do a pirate film? Like, just do a pirate film. Like, don't do this movie. Uh, so we go on and we have these guys crashing these ships into one another. And so eventually we just get it to where like the Braddock people are trying to like hook their way onto Nathan's ship, trying to fight out these guys with these kind of pirate swords and all this jazz. So eventually what ends up happening is they drop one of the pirate ships uh, when Braddock is trying to like grab onto Nathan, and Nathan is trying to get onto the helicopter, and Victor is trying to hold on to Nathan. Like, I got you, man. And all of a sudden we have of course Braddock, who falls, and then all of a sudden she has a ship fall on top of her, and then all of a sudden that ship is just seemed to sail pretty well. The sails like just bust out, and all of a sudden we're thinking like, oh, this ship is just gonna sail off just like the Goonies. Then all of a sudden the ship just quickly sinks, and they're like, yeah, that's a huge amount of money that we just wasted there. just yeah, there's a big massive thing of gold that's on the ship that we just whatever. Like we'll eventually just try to dig it out or something, right? Like so we go on and we have these characters where like this mission isn't all for nothing, because we have both Nathan and we have both Victor that are in this helicopter, and Nathan starts giving Victor these chunks of gold and then gives him this piece of bubble gum, because we have it where I guess Sam used to chew bubble gum for every single mission, and then Nathan took that on as every single mission he has to chew bubble gum. And so Nathan is to give Victor his last thing of bubblegum, and Victor goes and takes the bubblegum and chucks it out the window. And he's like, hey, that was my last piece. So we go on and we now are to basically just make it to the end credit scene, because basically that's where this movie ends. We're just naturally assuming that these people are going to be filthy, stinking rich and going to be able to have made all this money from all these things, but they still have to go on and keep doing missions because why not? So we go on at the end of this movie and are to have Nathan, who is to give this guy with this kind of patch over his eye, of course, this ring from his brother, because we have Nathan that is to have a necklace with the ring from his brother, because Sam is to say that he'll come back at some point for this ring. And of course we have this ring that has a certain incantation for it, and it means like greatness, it means low prices, it means sell high, buy low. Spider-Man is the coolest, blah blah blah. Like, it just feels like it's like the superhero like parody thing of like of course a ring has to have some goofy saying, because if anybody has seen Lord of the Rings, we have to have every ring that has to have a goofy saying on it. So we go on and we have Tom Holland that's kind of working with this patch-eyed guy, which won't really matter probably past this movie if they make a sequel. And if they make a sequel, then that guy will probably maybe be important. So we go on and we have Nathan, who is to eventually work with this guy, but all of a sudden Victor smashes in, and he all of a sudden is to have Mr. Whiskers, this cat that we weirdly had it where Nathan was demanding that they had this cat, and Victor was going on of like, why do I need a cat? Like, it's gonna crap everywhere. And like that was the reason why Nathan was to go and ask for this. So this guy would eventually like hate the fact that he has a cat in here. So because he said that they needed a cat for this mission, and because they kind of rattle off all these like texts, and the cat was one thing that they needed for this mission, and so it's like, all right, great. So they eventually are to hold a gun on this guy, and they're kind of walking out of this environment to be kind of halted by some other person, and then the movie just stops for end credit scenes. Um, there is another end credit scene where we, of course, have Sam be writing on this postcard, and so really those, I guess, are the only two end credit scenes, unless there's another one where I don't know about. So with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. Yeah, this was like a quick one to do, and I didn't think it was gonna be, but really there isn't much for this movie. So it was kind of quicker to go on to. And I thought that it was kind of weird also, because there's a hefty amount of details for this movie, because it's one of those like Clue movies or kind of Da Vinci Code like things, or National Treasure kind of movies, basically a lower register of that still, as I say, but still. Uh, so a lot of people, hey, go on and watch those movies instead, and then eventually find some convenient place to eventually find this for free. Uh, Probably on some HBO Max or something like that. It'll probably be convenient. Find it on an Amazon for Prime, and then go and watch that. Don't even go into premium access or early access for this movie. Don't bother. Go and find it on Prime and find it for free. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.